All right, it says recording in progress. So let me just start with my screen share and hopefully you guys can see my screen. Well, in case if you can see my screen, that's great. Let's start with the topic today, and that's basically more about Git and GitHub. So in today's session, I'm going to walk you through with those concepts that we have never discussed in the training. Now, the reason why we want to do it today is because that there are some areas that you should definitely know as a senior software engineer or just as a software engineer, because you cannot ignore those topics. That's are very, very essential. Now, things are like there are many topics. I cannot cover all of them, but I'll try my level best to at least cover or shed my knowledge on those. Those are especially the one that's very important to me. So without any further ado, let's start with the GitHub account. I think that's the right way to start with the session. Now in Git, for a specific repository, we know that how we can start the work. We know the process of cloning. We know the process of adding the files. We know the process of committing something, and then of course, pushing and pulling the file from GitHub server or to GitHub server. Now, that's a pretty straightforward approach, and I think that's what people should do all the time in order to have something into the GitHub. But is this something which we all should know, or do we have anything else to explore? Well, there is a lot of things to explore, especially under the settings section. If you go, you will be able to see that there are so many things related to management and accessibility, security and analysis, branching strategies, webhooks, notification, integration, deployment keys, action, environment, secrets, pages, and so on. And I can tell you these are absolutely important topics. But before even you jump into that, there are a couple of more things that we should pay attention to. Well, I'll be starting from the point where we left the generic GitHub session. So I think starting off with something related to cloning will make sense. Now, if you remember on the day when we were discussing about version control system in general, the very first thing that I talked about was of course repository, which I said that it is nothing but a special folder that you work with, and this folder would have something called .git, which makes sense, and I think this is a very straightforward work to do. Now, you can create this repository on your local machine. You can create this repository on GitHub, but our ultimate goal is to make this repository available on GitHub server or somewhere where version control systems are being used. Okay. Now, imagine if you have a remote machine, or if I say remote server, in that case, I can even consider this as a server. Now, when I say server, I want you to imagine GitHub. Right now, if you have a repository on GitHub, we know that there is a one way that we have learned so far. I'm not saying that there is only a one way, but the one way that we have learned is basically called cloning. We know that in order to get this repository somewhere on my local machine, I need to do something called cloning. And cloning is the approach which makes sure that you are making a copy of the repository on your local machine. Again, I'm saying, when I say local machine, please make sure that you think this local machine as your laptop. Like literally a local machine is just the machine that you are using for your purpose, and you will be able to make changes according to your need. And that's what local machine is all about, right? So whenever you want to grab something from a server like GitHub in order to do version controlling or tracking, tracing, something similar to your source code, you need to do something called cloning, and that makes a copy on your local machine. And I'm sure I don't have to repeat it, but I'm really sure that you all know what is cloning and how to do it. So, well, in order to start with anything related to, in order to do something like cloning, you have to have a GitHub account, of course, and then you have to have a repository on top of it. So if I go into something similar to, let's say, S3 Django, now I know that under the code section, I can always clone the repository with this HTTPS. And right after that, I can literally show you, I can go ahead, I can open my terminal, and right into the terminal, there is a very straightforward way to do it. You go into the terminal, you switch down to any of your respective directories or location, wherever you want to go for, and then just hit git clone and copy paste it, like the copy of URL, and paste it here. And that should be all. That's it. Like literally that's it. If you ls, you should be able to see S3 Django as a directory on top of my desktop. That's a pretty straightforward way. But is it the right way? Like, is it the most appropriate way to grab something on your local machine? Not at all. This is not a very secure way to allow anyone to clone your repository this way, especially when your repositories are private, right? Then there is another way that we just saw, which is called SSH. Now, I know we all have done the cloning of the repository with HTTPS, but what is this SSH? Now, in case if you guys have a GitHub account and if you click on SSH, you will automatically get a pop-up. And let me show you what pop-up you guys can see. In my case, it is not visible just because under my settings, if I go to the SSH and GPG keys, I still see one of my SSH being configured. I'm going to delete it. The moment I delete the SSH key in my account of GitHub, and now if I go back to my repositories from here, you will see that if I click on any of the repositories, let's say chat application, now if I try to clone it, and the moment I click on SSH, you see that you don't have any public SSH key in your GitHub account. You can actually create a new one, and then you can try to clone the repository. Okay, and this gives me a very clear idea that there is something to do with my keys, and there is something to do in terms of creating and then maybe uploading. So let's try to break down this process, because this process is going to help you a lot, not just in the context of your GitHub, but whenever you want to communicate with a machine like remote machine, you need certain token to be get exchanged, and that token will help you communicate back and forth between that local machine and the remote machine. So for a given situation, let's try to imagine that you have a remote machine. I'm going to call it as RM, which is a remote machine. And for the given situation, I'm going to consider this as a GitHub account. Try to understand. This is a very important knowledge that you should all know, because this is not just related to GitHub, but this can be related to any kind of machine communication that you want to do from your LM, which is local machine. You can literally imagine this to be your laptop. Okay. I'll try to break it down step by step so that you can understand it. Now, the earlier way that I was doing is that in order to have local machine and access to the repository of GitHub, I was doing something very similar. What is HTTPS, right? So I can actually use HTTPS as a cloning approach, and I can do it very easily. And that HTTPS is a globally available token, which can be used by any one of us, regardless of the region, regardless of the area of work, regardless of the machine. You can literally go ahead and use HTTPS and you should be all good to go. Whatever the repository you had here, you can literally make the same copy of repository on your local machine. But this is not a very secure way. I wanted my machine or the server to communicate on a respective or a given token. As in, let me explain it to you. I want my GitHub to talk to only those machines for which this account is configured. Let's imagine there are 3 laptops given. Okay, or you can imagine this 3 laptop as a 3 different or individual local machines. One can be of Shivani, one can be of, let's say, Nikhil, and one can be of, let's say, Pranita. So there are 3 people who are using 3 different machines, of course, and then let's imagine this is mine. I have already done Git cloning with HTTPS, which is not a very secure way. Now we want to learn the second way, where I can make some security based system and allow only those machines to communicate which have access to my GitHub account. Now, in that case, the same GitHub account would need a kind of token to be get exchanged. Okay, let's imagine machine A has developed a token called T1. Machine B has developed a token called T2, and machine C has developed a token called T3. Out of these 2 tokens, or these 3 tokens, I'm sorry, only token 2 got configured to the GitHub account. That means token 2 is available right here. And that's what my GitHub account is asking for. It says that you don't have any public SSH key in your GitHub account, which means there is no such T2 as a token available already on the GitHub account. So that means you have to configure it. But if you just saw my process, what I said, you need to basically generate that token on your local machine, and that token can be given back to the GitHub account. And then GitHub account will understand that, okay, this is the machine where I will be able to give my access to. Other than that, nobody else can actually access it because the SSH token has been configured. How would you do that? Well, you have many approaches to do it, but what we are going to use is called secure shell. That stands for SSH. SSH stands for secure shell, which is literally one of the best way to communicate from a local machine to a remote machine and exchange the piece of data or exchange any kind of data. But the question is, how do we get this SSH set up on a local machine? Well, of course, you have to have this SSH agent, first of all, available on your local machine to generate this, what we call public token or public RSA token. Otherwise, you won't be able to do it. If you do not have SSH agent running on your local machine, you won't be able to do it. But don't worry. Whoever so is having a Mac, Linux, or Ubuntu, you guys will you guys will always have something called SSH. But for those who are on Windows, if you guys have Git Bash, don't worry, you will be able to use SSH quite easily. So feel free to use Git Bash for whatever the operation I'm going to show you in next couple of minutes. Now, what is my ultimate goal? First of all, my ultimate goal is to make sure that my machine is ready to work with SSH. That means my machine needs to respond for the agent that I'm looking for. If the agent is live, if the agent is working, I can start generating some token. And once the token is available, I can share the same token with my GitHub account. And then once I will validate that, yes, this is the same account I want to talk to, then I can start cloning the repository. But what if I do not have token? Let's have a look. If I go back and start copying this, the way I have done it for HTTPS, that this is how I used to copy. I'm also going to copy this particular thing. So I copied this. And now let's suppose I want to go back to my, let me just clear the screen. And if I'm on my desktop, let's try to clone the repository here. And I'll just paste it. Now you can see that it is not my HTTPS link, it is my SSH link. If I hit enter, let's try to see if this is going to work. It says that no. It says that git@github.com permission denied public key. That means there is no such public key available for GitHub, due to which you cannot clone this repository via SSH, and that's a failure. It says that please make sure you have the correct access right and the repository does exist in that case. Okay, so we know that very first thing we know that the moment we try to do SSH cloning, we always need the right piece of permission, and which can be done by sharing the public key from the local machine. Okay, now we are again kind of back to the same question. How do we generate that key? Well, just to let you know, I'm going to show you some of the use cases which you might see at the real-time project. Always remember that if someone has been running SSH on your machine, let's imagine that your machine was being used by some other developer, or maybe your machine has an access given to some other developer and they might have run some SSH command in future, or they might have arranged some command in past of SSH. In that case, the chances are very high that there will be a repository, or not repository, but a folder, a hidden folder called .ssh. How about if I look into that? Yes, you can see that I do have .ssh folder, but honestly speaking, you guys might not be able to see that. The moment you do at the home location, if you go and write cd.ssh, you might get an error and telling us that this directory does not exist. Well, if I go and do ls, you can see that I have some known host. I do have some id underscore rsa.public key, and then I have some private keys given. Okay, but is this something that I'll be working with? Not at all, because these public keys are not satisfied with this account right now. So I might consider creating a new one, because I want to show you how to create a new one. But in case if you want to have a look to the public key very quickly, because I'll be deleting this right after the session, there you go. This is what the kind of token looks like. If you really want to have a look, I can use cat command to just concatenate all the string data. And there you go. This is my public key that can be exchanged to my GitHub account. And then GitHub account can actually give us the access to the repository to clone it with SSH command. But I do not want to start from here, because I genuinely want to show you that what if you do not have something like .ssh folder. So how about if I actually go back one step and I remove the whole file, since the file has already some content into it. So I'm going to just go ahead and write rm, which is remove -f for forceful remove, and then .ssh. It says that it is not existing. Probably I need to make sure that I have given the right piece of command, or maybe I should go into this SSH and then run this. Okay, I need to make sure that I've given from the right location in that case, probably. So it says it's not a directory. Just a second. We need to make sure that we remove it. Otherwise, it will not work. That's the main issue. Let me see how we can remove the directory here completely, or we can delete it, or maybe let me see if I can. How do we delete it? By the way, I just forgot the command. How do we delete a directory completely? Make sure the directory is populated. Because as long as the directory is populated in the context, populated, I mean by this, like the data already is in there. Okay, so I think -d would make sense, but it's not taking that as a directory. Let me see. Directory is not empty. Okay, got it. So if directory is not empty, I think I should use R. Yeah, I got it. I was actually using the forceful option. Guys, this is what you should learn, the debugging. Don't get panic if your command is not working, because this is what you really have to deal with your client, right? I was using the operation with -f, and -f stands for forceful deletion, which in this case will not work because my .ssh file is already filled with some content into it, which is this file, this file, and this file. And the moment I tried running -d, it says that directory not empty. And I realized that as long as the directory is not empty, I should use something called recursive. Now, when I wrote -r, it started deleting file recursively. That means one by one. And that means if I try to now switch back to .ssh, it should not exist. There you go. So now I am at the same state where you guys are. That means if you do cd.ssh, you should also see something like this. And I can also see something like this. But this is where the main work will start with. First thing that you should actually do is basically a command to figure out that whether your SSH agent is working fine or not. And again, the people who are on Windows, they might not be able to run this command. So please make sure to use your Git bash in order to use it. Now, what I'll do is I'll probably just write a typical bash script, like a simple scripting with the help of eval, and I'll make use of this. And hopefully, if I try to just print the data with, let's say, about this, and what I'm looking for is SSH-agent, and I want to make sure that I get this as a string, and this should be all good to go. Yeah. So this command, I'm glad that I ran it in the first attempt after so long. Well, yeah, I think this is the command. SSH-agent is basically the command that talks about whether the agent is available or not. Yes, it is available because I got the process ID, and that's the valid proof that yes, your SSH agent is working absolutely fine. Don't worry, guys. I will give all these commands in the chat box of Slack channel, and I will share it on general or the agenda of the day. Don't worry about that. Just focus on right now what I am doing. Well, this just verifies that I have my SSH agent running very, very good. But that doesn't mean that you have SSH key, because if I still try to go into something called cd.ssh, I do not have any directory. But don't worry, you do not have to create this directory manually. Instead, this directory will automatically create the moment you will create or generate any kind of SSH key. But the question is, how do we generate any SSH key under a GitHub account or something like this? Well, in order to do that, there is a very simple process to generate any SSH key, and this goes by very simple command. And if I'm right, I think the command is SSH-keygen. So this is the main command where you should be creating creating the token, then -t, and then you have to mention what algorithm you want to create with. So RSA is one of the main algorithm that you can use, and then -c. I'll explain you what these options are all about, and then you can give the name of this key. I'll call it as token. Maybe I'll call it as token GitHub. Okay, so this is my GitHub token that I want to create with. Awesome. Now you can see that the moment I wrote this command, it actually started creating some public and private RSA key pair. And this is the key pair that will validate this local machine to any other remote machine. And remember that I have seen a lot of people struggling with this particular stuff. When they create something like this, they always forget that, or they always try to, they always skip that. Whenever you write SSH command, this always gets created at your main location, which is your root location. In this case, user RIS PC is basically my root location or my main location. Under this, .ssh folder is getting created. And under that, ID_RSA as a file is getting created. But you can always change the location of it whenever you want. And that is where you need to pay attention to. Your company might not have SSH openly available at the root location. In that case, they might have given you some other directory location. So try to switch down to that directory location and then figure out whether the SSH is there or not. Keep that in mind. Now it says that enter the file in which you want to save it. I said like I'm okay with it. I want to save at my root and then .ssh. I'm good with it, and I'll hit enter. Now they also ask us to create any password in case if you do not want to share it with anyone, and even in case if someone has the access to it but they won't be able to use it. Well, I'm not at all into the mind of security right now, but you can give it. But I'll just keep on hitting enter, and boom, that's it. You just hit enter and then you go. You got something generated as a random bit of information, which is basically what I am looking forward to. Because if I do now cd.ssh, I should be able to actually get into my that directory. And if I do that, I can literally look into ls command and I can see that there is id_rsa.pub. But if you carefully look into that, there is nothing called known host. If I go up a little bit, and if I try to show you something where I did something like ls, yes, you can see that there is something called known host. But right now, when I generated a fresh token, there is nothing like known host because I have not configured or validated with any host like GitHub, AWS, or any other remote machines, probably like Ansible or something similar. And that is what the main job is. So, well, the question is, once I have generated the key, and you can always see the key under the id_rsa.pub, because this is your public file is, this will be your private, which you do not have to disturb, because this is where you'll be able to authenticate, and you will be only sharing the public key. Private key has to be always on the machine. This is your main key, which you need to copy. And this is what you need to exchange with your GitHub server or any other server. Again, I'm telling you, it's not only related to GitHub. You can share this with any kind of remote machine as long as you want to establish SSH-based connection. In order to do that, come down to your GitHub profile, go on to under the settings, and under the settings, you will figure out something called SSH and GPG keys. Right now, GPGs are basically the one, those are super private and being shared by within the organization. So I'm not going to add anything like that. Instead, I would like to add my SSH key. So let's click on new SSH key. And again, you guys can give the name that you have given here, which is token GitHub, or you can give something else. But for now, I'll keep it simple. I'll say it is token GitHub. And now I'll paste the key that I have generated. Once you do that, hit add SSH key. And if you are not getting any error, congratulations, you have successfully added the SSH key. And that's all. That's all you need to do. But adding the key will not verify or do any kind of validation to make sure that whether you are good to go or not. Instead, you should be able to actually check and validate against the key whether this authentication is good or not, as in, will you be able to use this key to move forward and clone any repository? And in order to do that, you need that validation stuff. And how do you validate anything? Well, in order to do validation, there is a one simple command that you need to run. And this command is not something that you have to remember. Instead, you can click on any of the repository, and the moment you click on code, come down to SSH, there is something called git@github.com. This is where exactly you need to understand whether the GitHub as a remote server will be able to talk to the local machine or not. And this is where you need to verify. In order to verify, you need to come down to your local machine. And on local machine, you have to write SSH hyphen. And if I'm correct, it has to be hyphen T. Hyphen T as T capital, which would represent the token actually. And this token needs to be checked against where? git@github.com. That's it. Now, this could be different for different type of platform. If it is different, AWS might have something different to be validated. It is GitHub right now, so we will check against this particular thing. So SSH-T git@github.com, hit enter. The moment you hit enter, I was expecting this to come. And of course, this is coming here, which is just an assurance that would you like to connect with something like this? Well, I heard that Shweta will be taking a session on EC2, and on EC2, she also going to use SSH, and you will again see the same sort of message. This is a message whenever you want to connect with some sort of remote machine and you allow your local machine to talk to them. This is the kind of approval you need to give, which makes make sure that yes, whatever the RSA key you have given, it is being shared with that platform and it is ready to start as a connection. So I said, yes, I'm good to go. I'll hit yes. And let's have a look. There you go. It says, hi, Riazul Haq. Automatically, it figured out that Riazul Haq as one of the GitHub user account has successfully authenticated, but GitHub does not provide shell access, which makes sense. I'm not at all going into that because what we wanted is just the authentication right now to be done with this particular user. Okay. That means if the authentication is done, token being exchanged, what all we should be able to do is we can actually click on any of the repositories. And let's suppose I want to go to working with tkinter. I'll click on code. I'll grab the SSH key, I mean the URL, and I'll hit literally the same command. Well, first of all, I'll get myself out of this place. And on desktop, I'll just do git clone. There is no such difference. Cloning with HTTPS, cloning with SSH, use the same command. There is no different command that you have to remember. Instead, the steps that I've talked about, that's what you need to remember. So git clone and give the URL and hit enter. The moment you hit enter, it should work fine. And it should say that, yes, I have resolved all the things and now it is available. That means if I do ls, I should be able to see something like, what was the application I cloned? I cloned working with tkinter, and it should be somewhere here. And there you go. Working with tkinter is available on my desktop. And literally, if I try to jump inside that, working with tkinter, working with, or something like that, I should be able to actually get into that. And there you go. If I do ls, I should be able to see all the files that are available on my remote server. That's it. That's all you need to remember. That again, please do not relate just with GitHub. It's a generic concept. Your client will definitely give you something like this. He might ask you to set up an account. He might ask you to set up a remote machine. He might ask you to set up the local machine in order to communicate with the remote machine. Remember, SSH is a very fruitful approach. All you need to do, you first of all need to generate the public key. Again, I'm telling you, the way I have done it today, you might not have the same piece of step. The client will have different piece of step, different piece of command, but they will always provide you the documentation. So again, respect the documentation, read that carefully. And once you are done, follow the step. But ultimate goal is to get this particular key or token and make that token available to the platform, regardless of any platform. It could be AWS, GitHub, or something like that. Just change the token, which in exchange the token, and then start your work. You should be all good to go. And just like as I said, Shweta will be also considering taking one session on EC2 instance, where she will be connecting one of the EC2 instance. You can imagine this as a virtual machine, and you would have your local machine, and she will be connecting this local machine to this virtual machine with the help of SSH. And she will be doing exactly the same task. The only difference is that this time the virtual machine will be giving or will be providing you a token in the form of some private file, which is .pem in this case. And this private file needs to be available on the local machine. I mean, back and forth, or reverse of the steps, whether it is from here to there or from this direction, all you need to make sure is that the token are being exchanged so that they can authenticate themselves and start communicating so well. That's it. This is a very simple step. I will also share you the commands and everything so that you guys can practice on your own, but that's all about the SSH. Now, I have one quick question before I'll give you the time to ask question to me. How about if I want to configure multiple SSH? Can I do that? I have a question and I'll give you enough time to research about it. Can we have 2 SSH token exchanged with one GitHub account? If you're smart enough, probably you might have got the idea right by looking into the settings block itself, because you do not see any other SSH key, but you see another SSH key area, which means you have to generate another SSH key. But the question is, from what SSH key I will be able to actually clone my repository? Is it this one or the one that I'm going to configure? So the first task, at least have one SSH key configured, create it, validate it, and try to clone at least one repository. Once you are done, go ahead and create a new SSH key and see how it is making difference in your account. And if it is done, congratulations, you have learned the SSH part of the GitHub. All right. Now I'll leave it to you guys if for any question. In case if we do not have any question, I can start with the next topic for the day. Any question that I can answer for you guys? Or in case if things are not clear, I can even repeat myself. I can even open this diagram. Any question, anyone? Are we all good? I know you guys kind of have, you guys have a habit of talking to Shweta, but hopefully things are quite clear. And in case if things are good, we can move ahead. All right, so I'm okay. Nice. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much for the confirmation. Let's move ahead with a very similar topic for the day. Okay. What you just saw is that Riaz as an instructor was just making use of his local machine, and he was communicating with a remote server, and he was every time doing something like cloning, regardless of the approach as an HTTPS or SSH. what he was doing, he was making the copy of the repository all the time to the local machine. Now, I have a question. You guys can give this answer in the chat box. Let's imagine I made a copy, as in I made a cloning on my local machine. Now I have done some changes. So that changes can be of, let's say, 2 files and 3 lines of changes I've done. Now, once the changes are confirmed, how would you make sure that you can bring those changes to the remote machine, or you can make those changes available on the remote machine? Can you tell me the steps of doing it on GitHub or Git, not GitHub, of course? What is the first step? What is the first command in Git you will be writing once you are done with the changes? Or let me know if I'm calling it right. Don't do you think that git add has to be the first command in order to make sure the changes has been staged? So git add dot. Then once the additions has been done, I always prefer to check the status, but that's not mandatory. Always try to check upon the status that whether the files has been modified or not. Once the file has been modified, then of course the next option is to make sure that git commit. Now again, I am not taking the best practices under the picture. I'm considering that I am the only person who is working on the master branch. So there is no other branching that is happening. So there is no merge and something like that. And then once the commit is done, I do git push. And the moment I do git push, things will be automatically available to the remote machine. Great. And there is nothing wrong. I think this is good. You took the clone, you did the changes, you added the changes to the staging area, you saw the status, you committed the files, and then you push the file. And now the changes are available onto the remote machine or the remote server. But that's a problem. This is a problem because you always have to create a copy on a local instance. What about if I want to create an instance of the same repository on the remote server only? Try to understand. I am not going to take any kind of consideration of local machine this time. What I'm trying to say is, what if I want to make a copy of repository or any public, let me make it correct, any public repository. I want to make a copy of any public repository, but instead of making it on local machine, I want to do it on the remote server, which means a repository is available on GitHub. Okay. And I want the same repository to be copied on my account, but instead of local machine, I want this to be on my GitHub account. Then how does it make difference? Well, this is where the concept of fork comes in picture. You must have heard this term called forking or fork a repository. So the forking of a repository is just a slight of different. There is literally a basic difference with cloning if you compare, of course. So cloning a repository and forking a repository is just a line of definition of difference. Cloning always makes a copy on the local machine, whereas fork or forking a repository makes a copy of the repository on the remote machine itself or remote server itself. Well, how do we practice it? Well, let's go ahead and try to do it. Now, I am going to go back to maybe my account and have a look. So you see that there are some repositories that are publicly available for me to explore. I keep on searching for Terraform. I keep on searching for many things. I'll click any one of these. And this is a public repository. You can see that it is completely available by someone from a cloud post. I don't know how to call it, but yeah, there is someone who has an account on GitHub and they have created an open repository. Now I have two ways. I can go ahead and I can just copy this and clone it. And then I can push this repository on my remote server or remote account, which is not the right way because I am not the authenticated guy or I'm not the right person to make the changes in the code. Because this author, this guy who is the author of this repository has the right permission and he's legally available or legally applicable to make the changes into it. Which means if I have to make the changes into it, I have to create what I call pull request. So in case if you're getting confused, let me go back. I just talked about git add, git status, git commit, and git push, right? This was fairly a simple step, and push was ultimately making changes to my remote server, which is wrong. I cannot disturb anyone else's code directly. That's not a right way, and you cannot even do it. Then what is the way to bring the copy of this repository itself on this account as a fork, as a forking, and then maybe cloning it and making the changes. And once the things are done, instead of actually pushing the code, you have to do what I call pull request. So you can see that this guy is already having 2 pull requests from somewhere else. You can see that a guy named Felipe Batista and a guy named Alex has already created 2 pull requests for this person to accept. Once he will accept, these changes will be merged with his code. And I can show you how I can also do it. Well, if you see that he has already got 113 people in his account or in his repository who has made the copy of his repository. Okay, that means there are 113 people from all over the GitHub has copied this repository, but not on local, where on GitHub account itself. What does that make? I mean, how does it happen? Well, if I click on fork, look at this. It's just a one simple step. Click on fork and you can literally see that forking Cloud Post, Terraform, AWS, RDS cluster, and boom. Now this is literally, you can see, I can see my name, and under my profile, I see this new repository. Can you see that? And it also says that it is not your repository. Instead, you have forked this repository from somewhere else, which means now I can literally click on any of the file. Let's suppose I click on the variables.tf, which is a Terraform file. And now I can actually make a clone of this and I can start making changes into the file. Let's suppose if I change it for an instance, I'm doing the change it's straight away on my this area, and I'm trying to create one more variable stuff. Let's suppose I copied this and I copied one more time. I copied one more time. Just for the sake of implementation, I'm showing you some random changes. So I have done some random changes as an open source contributor. I wrote my code, and now I am asking this guy to actually approve mine. See, if I go ahead and say updated the file for new variables, okay, variables, and I say for now it has 2 new var areas. Okay, now according to me, what I did, I felt that his code is good, his repository is very good, but he should also add these 3 or 2 variables under his code. I liked it, I changed it, and now I am going to commit it. Now the thing is that I can commit directly to the master branch, or either I can commit to the new branch and then I can create a pull request. If I try to do commit directly to the master branch, let's see. If I do that, commit changes. This is being done, right? Now you can see that it says updated the file for the new variable, but this is being done only to my local server. That means my account forked repository, not to the one that has the request or the legal permission to edit it. Instead, what I should do as an open source contributor, but imagine, I mean, why would you want, like, you make the changes and then merge to the master when you know that nobody will recognize your work? Nobody will be able to understand or will ever get to know that you have done these changes, because things are still available on your account, not to the main account, the one who has access to this repository as a legal owner. What you should do in that case, maybe let's suppose I'm going to copy this whole and I'm going to paste it. Great. Now what I can do is I see an option called create a new branch for this commit and start a pull request. And there you go. This will create a pull request by the name of Riyazul Haq patch 1. That means it's an automatically fetched name. You can change it and I can propose a changes. The moment I click on propose changes, there you go. It comes with a lot of options. It says that Riyazul Haq wants to actually merge his code to the master branch, to the real owner. And maybe here you can write what changes you have done. And then you can create a pull request. And that is what exactly you will be doing at the client side. You will hardly be able to merge the code directly to the master. Instead, you always have to create a pull request. Keep that in mind. Creating a pull request is not like you're asking for someone approval. It is more like that you're working as a team and you have shared your piece of code with your manager, technical team lead member, or someone senior in the team who can check your code and give you the green signal that your code looks good. Please merge the code. And then you can go ahead and merge with the master, or maybe your reviewer can do that. But all I'm trying to help you understand here is that not, of course, what pull request is, but I'm trying to help you understand that cloning a repository is not the only way to make a copy of your repository, but instead you can also make what we call forking. And forking will also do the same work which cloning was doing. Instead, it will create a copy on the remote server instead of a local machine. Now, if you have a question, Riaz, what if I have created a repository as a fork? You can see that has a recent 2 pushes 2 minutes ago, but that's completely up to me. I mean, up to nobody will be able to see it. That's fine. Okay. And yeah, I mean, what I was saying is like, in case if you want to clone it, you can do it. There is no such problem. You can clone it and you can just take it like for your learning purpose and you can do it. That's it. That's the fork that you should know. There are many other things that you can do. In case if you have a question, Riaz, I'll leave it to you guys for a kind of task. How about if I am like, all we know is a git clone, right? We all know about the command called git clone, but do we have something like git fork? And if we have, how do we use this? So this is going to be a task for you. Like, can we fork any repository with the help of CLI? Instead of doing something from GUI like I did like this way, can we actually fork something with the help of what do you say, like CLI? Okay, that's the second thing of the day. Now let's talk about many more. Then there is a new thing which I am going to start with, and that's called Stash. Or before I do Stash, I can also show you something really quick, and that's an integration. Actually, you all should know Slack integration with Git. I'm just telling you, you guys have GitHub account and also a Slack account. You can also practice on your own. So there is an application already available for GitHub, and that's called Git app. And slack.github.com is basically the place from where you can actually start adding it to your Slack space. You guys can, like, I can show you. I do have a Slack space open right now. Let me show you guys. Just a second. Yep. Yes, so you can see that this is a Slack space, and I'm sure because you guys have your email addresses and all that stuff, you can create a free workspace, right? And under that workspace, you can integrate your GitHub. Like literally, you can integrate your GitHub, and it is so powerful that whenever I make the changes, whenever I do something like pull request or commit or anything similar, I automatically will be able to receive messages like this. I will show you this in a very practical way, but I just wanted to ask you if you can do it, that would be great. You can see that GitHub as a one application is subscribed to this whole Slack channel and subscribed to a specific GitHub user account. And now this is all good to go. Now you can see that one commit has been done to the master branch by Riazul Haq, and there is some new changes going on. After that, one more commit has been done to the master branch by Riazul Haq, and that is related to updating the charts.py file. Look at this. I mean, my manager in that case doesn't have to go to my GitHub account and check upon the repository. Instead, he can click here and there you go. Automatically, he'll be able to see that, okay, this is the kind of line he has changed or removed or whatever it is, just by keeping himself on the Slack channel. I will show you, that's completely out of context for today, but I'll show you what does that mean. But please, in case if you guys can create your new workspace, if you can integrate with the Slack, that would be really, really helpful. Moving forward. What is the next thing? Well, we are still left with two more important concepts, and that's called rebase. And then there is another one called stash. I will start with a simple one, which is stash. Stash is like keeping, like in general, it's called keeping something into a safer place. Now, what is that safer place can be? Okay, imagine you're talking to someone at a government authority, right? You're actually talking to someone very senior at government authority, and you are supposed to write them an email. Again, try to understand. You are talking to someone at government authority, and you're supposed to write them an email regarding, let's say, job approval or something related to maybe a job approval. Now, since you're doing that, you're writing an email, but you know that it's always good to have that email drafted so that you can go back, check upon it, recheck it, and make sure that whatever the mistakes you have done, you can correct it out. And once you have absolute surety that, yes, this looks good, then you can send that email. Let me show you. This is my Outlook. You can see this is completely my Outlook. I do have some drafts here. These are drafts that are related to Slack channel, some feedback, some training related, some candidates, and so on. I know that I might be using these drafts in future for some specific reasons or some specific purpose. But for now, they are completely sitting under a separate section and they are not at all disturbing anything related to my main inbox. Similar thing you can do under GitHub. For an example, let's try to understand with the picture again. This is a very interesting concept, and honestly speaking, you will love it because especially those who are very new into software development, they take time, like genuinely they take time to build something, and they know that whatever they are doing, they always they always assume that, or at least they expect from themselves that I will be able to do it very correctly in the first go. But it takes time for them. They keep on changing the source code. They keep on updating, modifying the source code. But that doesn't mean that they might not get someone else pull request. They might not get someone else a new code under their code. Then how they can make sure that they're saving their code somewhere else as a piece of code and later on they can merge it? Well, in order to explain it, let's try to understand. Let's suppose this is your local machine and you have some piece of code here. And assuming that this code has come from GitHub account, that means GitHub repository, you have cloned this code onto your local machine. This is my local machine, and this is Visual Studio that you have opened. You can see line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5. Awesome. Now you are one of the developer who has recently joined the team. Try to understand, right? You have a GitHub repository, you have a local machine, you have your Visual Studio as one of the IDE, and you got all the lines of code that were available on GitHub. Now there are 4 other team members who are working on the code. Let's imagine they are here. They do have their own account. They do have their own machines and everything, but they are working definitely independently on the project. Got it. You got the code cloned, and now it's your turn to maybe add login page functionality and let's say multi-factor authentication. That means as a team, you have got the opportunity to create a login page and a MFA as a multi-factor authentication on top of the login page. While at the same time, this person is working on feature 1, this person is working on feature 2, feature 3, and feature 4, and they all are working for the login page only. Okay, so you got another feature called F5, which was MFA integration. These people might have got something else, but for now, you clone the repository as a master branch, and now you have a piece of code. Awesome. You got a 2-week of deadline. That means you have to complete the task within 2 weeks. Let's assume you started writing the code by making sure that you are working on the different branch. That means you made a copy of the branch, and let's call upon this that this is a feature 5 branch, and you started writing the code. You're writing the code very happily, and you're very happy with the progress, and you got things being completed very easily, right? But after 2 days, you realize that one of the team member has already completed the functionality number 1, and your manager has asked you to clone the new code or to pull the new code. That means you will be now writing git pull. Awesome. You will be writing the git pull, but you want to make sure that whatever the pull you will take, that should not disturb the code that you have written. Because if you know, there is always a big chance of merge conflict. How many of you have heard of merge conflict in Git and GitHub or any version control system? Have you heard of this term merge conflict?
Yes.
Right. So in case if you have heard it, that's great, because this is the biggest problem once is specifically in the case of git pull. When we try to take a pull of someone else's code into the main branch that you're currently working with, the chances are very high that you might get merge conflict. And in that case, you will be quite confused, and you do not want to divert yourself from the piece of line that you're writing. In that case, what you would like to do? In that case, what you would do is you will try to take this code and draft it. Like draft it in such a way that this will be completely available somewhere else and will not be visible to the changes that your team has done or the changes that is already available in the master. This will be completely drafted, and you can literally assume that from here it is gone. It is gone, like it is literally gone, but still it is there somewhere on your local machine. Again, it is not going anywhere on GitHub. it is going somewhere on your local machine as a copy or as a draft. Okay, and it will be saved with like a typical indexing. If you know Python, you know indexing concept, right? Index 0, 1, 2, 3, and whatever the changes you are doing, and as long as you're writing git stash, git stash, git stash, it will keep on updating the indexing so that every line of modification can be seen there. I know it looks pretty challenging to understand right now. I'll show you practically in next couple of minutes, but hopefully this picture will be able to give you an idea what Git Stash can do. Literally, Git Stash is nothing but drafting your code for later purposes so that whatever the piece of code you have written, you know that you have a control on it, but right now you might not need it because of the situation going on in the development, but in future you might need it, so you can merge it. Okay, awesome. So I think without any further ado, let's start with this. I'm going to quickly create a new repository, and I would like to literally call upon this as Git Stash work. And once it is done, I'll probably create a README file and I'll give the instruction. This is the demo of Git Stash. Awesome. Okay, and I'll just create repository. Awesome. That's it. That's all I need for now. And I probably would be creating a new file, and I'll call it as maybe name.txt. Nothing fancy, just a simple file. This is the file to test certain functionalities of Git Stash. Okay, awesome. And I'll just go ahead and say new changes being done. And I'll just commit to the master. Awesome. Now I'll go back, click on HTTPS and clone it. I'm going to go back and hopefully, how about if I can show you actually on Visual Studio Code? That would look literally like little good to you guys. I'll just open up the terminal here in the Visual Studio itself, and I'll move myself to the desktop. And on desktop, I'll create a folder called Git Stash. And I'm sorry, let me just create it first, mkdir. In case if you guys have not used these commands, that's fine. You can actually practice on your own. Now I'll jump myself into Git Stash. Awesome. Now under this Git Stash folder, I will clone the repository. Let me show you how. So first of all, let me just zoom a little bit. Yep. Now I'll write Git clone and I'll paste it. Awesome. Now the repository has been cloned. I'll quickly open it on my Visual Studio desktop, Git Stash work, and hit open. Amazing. Now I know that I got my file, I got my README, I got my name.txt, and I'll open the terminal 2 at the bottom. Okay, this looks good. Everything is working so good so far. I got my repository being cloned. I got the line of code that I was able to see on my GitHub server, and now I can start working on here. Okay, now just look at this. Let's suppose I'm working on some function, and of course, this is not a Python file, but I'm just trying to give you an idea. There is a function called name. Name as in it would be doing concatenation of the name. So I'll say name sum, and it would return nothing but typical string concatenation as in A plus B. Awesome. Now, while I was doing that, I realized that my manager has told me that Reyas, go ahead and make a pull or take a pull from the repository because someone has changed the name.txt file. Understand? Someone has changed the name.txt file and you have to take the pull because that might also impact your ongoing code strategy or maybe functionality. Now, I do not want to lose it because I know once I will pull the code, I will absolutely lose the control on this one because I have not drafted it. I have not edited it. I have not committed it. Now you must be wondering, Riyaz, why don't you just go ahead and write git add and then git commit and you should be all good to go. But imagine how many commits you will do. You might have to write 500 lines of code. You might have to write 700 lines of code or maybe more than that. You might change today. You might change tomorrow, maybe day after tomorrow. Are you going to just create commit, commit, commit and commit? In that way, you would have thousands and thousands of commit. And that's a very bad practice. You want to make a commit when you're very sure that this is the change I ultimately would like to see in my code. Agree, right? This is a very common thing. You would never want to overwhelm your repository with so many commit with useless changes. Just like today, I felt that the name has to be like XYZ instead of AB. Are you going to commit for that? No. Instead, I would like to change it on at my side and maybe draft it. So please ignore that in case if you're having a mind that Riaz, why you're not committing it, I will not do it because I do not want to just overwhelm my repository with so many commit because I know that that might be useless. Instead, I would like to save this piece of code somewhere in a safer place as a draft folder. And once I feel like that, yes, I want to go for it, then I can bring it. How we do it? Well, first of all, let me just do ls and let me, yeah, I'm already in my repository. Now I can literally show you, first of all, let me show you the status. If I show you the status, it says that your branch is up to date and everything is going good. But if I do git difference, let me show you what it says. My bad. Git difference, I have not saved it, but once I clicked on save, and now if I go right and git diff, it should say that yes, there is some lines of code that you have changed. Makes sense. I'm good with it because I do not really need to do anything like changes. Now you can see that it has some content, it got some changes as well. But now I do not want these changes to be committed or maybe available in my staging area. Instead, I would like to keep them into some area where my local machine will be able to read it, but it will not make any impact to my remote server, which is GitHub account. Then the command is very simple, git stash. Like literally, this is the only command you need to write. You can give messages just like git commit message that you give, like whatever the changes you're doing, you can give a very good message. But right now, if you write git stash, boom, it says that saved working directory and index state VIP on master WIP, which is working ID. And then this is the ID that you have got for new changes being done. Look at this. And the code is gone. Like literally my drafted code is gone, or whatever the changes that I've done, that code is gone. But that is not gone in such a way that I cannot bring that back. I can literally bring that back with a lot of different command, but that is now saved somewhere at this location. You must be wondering, Riaz, how would you see what changes you have done? Well, that is where I was talking about writing a good message, but don't worry. We do have a command called git stash list. The moment you write list, you can see that it has certain indexing, and that indexing represents what changes you have done. And it always creates a copy of the master. So it is having whatever the changes you have done from whatever the branch, not just the master, but whatever the branches you have used from that branch, it make a copy and draft your code. In case if you're wondering, Riaz, how about if I want to make new changes and keep it as a different stash? You can do that. Let's suppose I want to see a rough idea about stash in Git. Okay, now this is a new piece of code. Again, I do not want to add, I do not want to commit, I do not want to create any new ID. Instead, I can just go ahead and write git stash. The moment you do that, another stash has been done, and it is again being top of master, which means a master draft has been created. And literally you can go back and write git stash, and boom, you got index 1, you got index 2. Now imagine you have taken the pull. Let's suppose someone in your team has been doing something as a new functionality. Let's suppose someone has changed the code and has wrought, let's suppose, new changes. Just for the sake of understanding, I said new changes has been done by someone else in the team. Okay, in the team, and you are supposed to take the pull. Awesome. And someone has just done the changes, okay, and committed. So this is someone else. Let's assume maybe Shivani, Pranita, or Nikhil as a team member. Someone out of you three has done this changes. Now I am on my local machine. I just got to know from my manager that this file is no longer like this. There is a new changes has been done. Please take the pull and start working on it. But I know that whatever the changes I have done, I do not want to lose them. Instead, I have done stashing, which means I can literally have control on it. Okay. And if that is so, I can literally take git pull, right? The moment I wrote git pull, I got the new changes. Very good. But that doesn't mean that the pull will impact the changes that I was making. No, I can go ahead and write git stash. Okay. Let's suppose git stash. Now by default, if you write git stash pop, now pop is like a literally stack. If you know stack as a data structure, there is a pop and push, right? Push and pop. So pop is like automatically it will take the one that is the latest commit. or latest stash and will just remove it from here. Again, pop will remove. It's like a it's like a typical data structure. In case if you don't know it, let me explain it to you. This is a stack. Stack might have item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4 and 5. If you do stack pop, pop will always take the item from here and throw it out, but it will remove it also. But whenever you have something like stash, I'm taking I'm removing stack from here. Now I'm taking stash. So whenever you do stash and you write apply, apply will always wait for the indexing. In case if you're not giving, it will always take the latest indexing and will keep the file in the stash area, but always be able to make the changes as well. Like it will bring the file out of the stack, make the changes into your repository, but the file will still be available here. If you want to have a look, let's have a look. I'll go ahead and instead of this, I'll just write apply. If you do apply, it says that merge conflict, which makes sense because I know I had given some spaces, but you can see that I literally got that line of code that I was having as a drafted code. See that I got it. Ignore the merge conflict. That's fine. I'm not taking care of that because that's a very common thing and we can resolve it. But what we need to understand that yes, though the code was not available to me, but I can still see that code now available in the latest code that I have pulled. I have the line that I pulled. I have the new line that I modified. And also, if I do git stash list, have a look. The stash has not been gone. It's still there. But you know what? The moment I write git pop, not pop, of course, git stash pop, git stash pop. In that case, it says that, of course, because I just took the apply, it says that needs merge the stash entries kept in case you need it again. Because it's already there and I already applied it by default. I couldn't use any indexing. That's fine. And I already have this here. But in case if I want to make sure that I got something else, maybe how about if I use maybe 0? Let me see how we can use the indexing. There is a bit of syntaxes. Let's see stash, or you guys can also search about the stash git index. Because I know, like as far as I have done it, I know that there is an index that you can also follow along with. And that's what I want to, so there you go. Git stash list, awesome. Yes, so it has git stash pop and then you have to give the entire line of it. So I'm gonna grab it, this one, okay. And now I'll write git stash pop and then paste it. Hit enter, okay, it's been kept here. So I'll need to go with 1. Or maybe it's already there. Oh, it says you need to first of all merge it. So I'm going to go back and make the changes. Let's suppose. So guys, this is one of the manual way to do it. Okay, it's done. Now, of course, you can do git add and then whatever you want to do it as a merge or whatever you feel like, you can do it. Okay. And I'll say new changes being done. Okay, great. And I'll hit git push. Let's just push the new changes, but still you can see that I still have my stashing area, right? So it says that no local changes to be saved because I pushed it, but definitely if I have not pushed it, my staging area, I mean my stashing area was definitely be there. Now, one thing that I couldn't show is that, let's suppose if I have random piece of data like this way, right? And if I now do git stash for an example, let me just save it first of all, now do it. Now you can see that there is a new working tree of stashing. Let's add one more line of code or maybe another random line of code. Okay. Now this is another saving area. Now I want this to be saved also. Git stashing. That's also gone. Correct. Now if you see git stashing as a list part, you should be able to see git stash list. And now you have all these things. 1, 2, 3. You see that? Everything is there. This is where I was talking about keeping the indexing. Now, literally, you can go back and say git stash pop or apply, whatever you would like to say, and then you can grab any one of these indexing and paste it. Now, it says that merge conflict because it's already there. So there is a merge conflict happening. Maybe I'll go with something else. That's fine. Merge conflict is very common thing and you have to deal with it. And that's keep on coming for for every obvious reason. And I'll have pop and hit enter. Now it says that again, it says merge because I do have 5 changes. But yes, what I'm trying to say here is that the moment you would have stash being given as an indexing, it will pick that index and be able to merge the file in it. Instead of multiple line, I could have given 1 line or 2 line. In that way, it would have worked very, very fine. Well, my motive here is to not talk about how the files are getting changed. Instead, my motive here is to talk about this draft, right? This draft is always something that you can track. This is the draft that you can always use to make sure that things are being saved, and things are being saved in such a way that you can always go back and merge it whenever you want. Okay, so moving forward, if you feel like that your code has so many functionalities included and you literally cannot afford making so many changes or so many commits just because you got so many functionalities to implement, please make use of stashing. Now, there is a one good documentation, I think on official Git Stash. Let me show you. Not on Atlassian, I'm sure. Like, yeah, this one. So you can see that there is a list command, show command, drop command, pop command, branch command, clear command, create command, and store command. Honestly speaking, you might need these two first, the pop one and the apply one. The pop and apply are very similar. Apply will always keep the stash available, whereas pop will remove it from the staging area or the stashing area. Now you have some examples here. You can see that someone has taken the pull, then he has stashed this, and then pull, and then again stash pop. So this is like keep on making the changes and things will look absolutely as like you are still working on your changes without interrupting any workflow. You see that? Interrupted workflow and then without interrupted workflow. So interrupted workflow would look like committing new things again and again. Okay, so don't do that. That's a very bad practice. Now, one final last thing for the day. Let me share my screen, like another screen. Actually, I have it there. Yeah, I got it actually. There you go. Well, this is theoretical. This is not at all very practical thing, to be honest. But yes, I just wanted to let you know, please, it's a humble request. Whenever you are at the client side, you have been given an opportunity to work on something as a feature, please create your own branch. Do not create, or do not work on the master branch. Please don't do that. Yesterday itself, we had a big problem. One of our consultant had actually merged the code to the production ready application. Can you imagine? Like literally the application was live for the customers to use it, but he merged some uncompleted code or incompleted code, and he just merged it with the production, which was a blunder mistake. So it's a humble request. Cross check it as many as time you can, but make sure that you have a branch created. Now the question is, Riaz, how we can actually create a proper branch? Well, if you are working on something very stable, as in something that is already in the use, something that you can rely on, always try to make a branch name with something like stable. If you're working with something that is absolutely the production ready, that has to be called as master, or sometimes also known as main branch. But in case if you have been assigned for some issues, some errors, some feature building, please try creating a branch with the name called topic underscore maybe anything. Maybe let's suppose if there is a MFA related issue that you need to work upon, so you can say that branch name as in topic hyphen feature MFA, or maybe topic hyphen your name or something similar. But please try to follow some basic convention. It's not like it is always true. Honestly speaking, one company might use this particular strategy, another one might not use it, because this is completely dependent to company. But keep that in mind that you follow some strategy, otherwise that would be very bad. Like literally, I'm telling you, I have seen some candidates doing something like this. They had a master branch, right? And they were supposed to create a branch out of it. And so let me just make it a little complicated. This was a master branch. Someone has changed the master branch and there was a new commit. Then there was another commit, M2. And now you joined the team and you came here. So you were supposed to create the branch from this place, which you did. But what you did, you named the branch ABC. Is this good idea? No. How people can understand what is this ABC branch? This is a bad practice. So try to understand. That's what I'm trying to say. When you are assigned a task for the branch M2 or for the commit M2 from the master branch, understand, are you working on a feature? Like, are you building something new? Are you solving any issues? Or is this a feature that is already stable? You're just supposed to make basic changes. or is this a master branch itself? That is what you need to understand. And according to that, you need to name the branch. So let's suppose if you're working on a feature called MFA, I'll be honest, if I can be at your place, what I'll be writing is this way. Maybe F or the number F1 would represent feature 1 underscore maybe my name, let's say Riaz underscore MFA. This could be one of the name you can go for. Or if not, maybe I can go topic, which would represent what topic I'm assigned to, topic as feature 1 underscore MFA. Okay, or maybe topic underscore feature underscore Riaz. This way, people would always be able to realize that Riaz has worked on a topic as a feature, or maybe if there is an error or issue, so I can write topic underscore issues underscore Riaz. Now you can see that this is a very good convention for creating a branch naming. So keep that in mind, please. It's a humble request. Don't do these kind of mistakes. These are very bad mistakes to follow. And I genuinely do not want you guys to do that stuff. So follow along with this one. Then they have given some specific naming convention. Please follow and read upon it. And yes, there will be some branches that you might see in future and at the client side all the time, related to features branches, bug branches, and hot fixes. So in case if you don't know what is hot fixes branches are one of those which I think, I mean, there are certain errors that come after the master branch has been approved. So let me show you Git branches strategies. So if you go on Google and if you try to write strategies, like literally you will see the hot fixes branch later on in the picture. So maybe, yeah, this one. Yeah, I think this one is good. Look at this. You have taken some time, you worked on certain features, you developed those features, now you're releasing your branches. But after releasing the branches, when the code got merged, look at this, code got merged here, code got merged here, code also got merged here. But after certain time, people came up and say that there is something wrong with the production code. In that case, there are certain bugs that you need to handle. And in that case, it's a recommendation. Always remember, it's a recommendation that you create a branch with the name called hot fixes, because these are kind of very important fixes that you are supposed to complete. So don't just name it randomly. Always remember that. That's a very good thing. So this is a very good idea. I will share this link to help you understand what could be the right naming convention. See that hot fixes branches comes from the need to act immediately upon an undesirable state. Like I recently had a situation where I was working on an auto scaling based system and the scaling has failed, due to which like I'm telling you one of the situation. What happened is actually I had my AWS account. Under that AWS account, I was supposed to run 12 machines, like 12 virtual machine, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So I was supposed to run 12 EC2 machine based upon the traffic. So as long as the traffic is high, I will keep on spinning up my machines. That means I will keep on starting my machine. And once the traffic will go low, I will just shut down my machine. But the problem was that I had only 11 machines criteria. That means my network can support maximum to 11 machine, but I was expecting 12 machine to be get configured. So once the condition for 12 machine came in picture, I was completely lost. Like it was keep on giving me an error that the configuration went wrong. We cannot configure the 12th scaling and scalability is failing. Then I realized that this is an immediate action that needs to be taken upon, or action needs to be considered very quickly. And that's where what we did is we created a hotfix branch where I let the team understand that, hey, there's a production problem and things are going wrong. There is something wrong with the 12 machine. We need to look into it. And then the network engineer realized the configuration in the infrastructure as code was wrong. Instead of 28 IP addresses, he could have given maybe 24 or maybe 16 to have a better IP CIDIR range, which is cross inter-domain ranges. Okay, DIR. Yeah, so that was one thing. Hopefully, I'll be able to share more such ideas with you guys tomorrow. So join me tomorrow also, where I'll be sharing real-time practice of pull request and Slack integration along with rebasing. So in that way, I will also complete GitHub, some advanced part of it. And then later on, we'll start with code debugging, which is on Chrome developer tool. All right. I will definitely ask Shweta to upload the recording, or else I will do it at my end. And hopefully you'll be able to go through the recording. But you got some task. Make sure you go ahead and enable your SSH configuration and share me the screenshot for the same. Second thing, go ahead and try to configure 2 SSH keys. Third is try and go ahead to work with Git Stash command and make use of fork instead of cloning, and see if you can create some pull request for me. You can use my GitHub account to create a fork and create some pull request for me. Make sure you're using a right pull request messages for me. All right. That's been it.